The last normal job I took was a garage rebuild in Claque. Fresh slab, two-bay father-son project with a busted craftsman tool chest and a dog that loved everyone but the inspector. You could smell pine in the studs and coffee in the thermos, things that tell you life still has edges you can hold. The one after that wasn't normal. We got the call on a Tuesday after the 4th, when the mosquitoes are mean and the sun sets like it's clocking overtime. A woman with a not local accent said she was representing a conservation partner handling funds earmarked years ago, now greenlit all at once or else. She talked fast but careful, like the words had been lawyered twice. Brown, my boss, forearms like he bench presses joists, met her at the Perkins off Highway 53. 30 minutes later, he stepped outside in his Carhartt jacket and gave us a nod that said, "We're not the top dogs, but we're in the kennel. We're doing this," he said, like it was both a dare and a blessing. Pack for 2 months. They put us in a tired apartment complex at the edge of a town I'd never heard of. The sign said, "Welcome to Tom's Cog," with a blue sunflower painted in the corner like somebody's niece had done it for a school project. The parking lot was a patchwork of old oil stains and cigarette burns. There was always one upstairs window cracked in all weather. There was always one guy at the bus stop who never got on a bus. Inside our unit, beige carpet you couldn't quite clean, a couch that squeaked even when you breathed, a kitchen that smelled like someone else's spaghetti. The AC rattled. On the table, a packet with laminated badges and high-vis vests we didn't order. The logo was a hatchet, clean, corporate, mean. Trucks with that hatchet rolled past day and night. Some carried skinny pipe like fishing poles. Some carried rolls of fencing like giant slinkies. Some tugged trailers humming with pumps. The unmarked SUVs slid in and out like sharks. Every time you stepped out for a smoke, there was a new face in a muted hard hat color you hadn't learned yet. Ours were beat-up white and stickered. Theirs looked like they'd just been pulled from a catalog. They said conservation effort, which around here can mean weeds, hogs, or winter roads. They didn't say frogs, but you could hear them before you saw water. That low bull croak you feel in your ribs more than your ears. Frog Lake wasn't much on a map, more a rounded notch of glacial memory, ringed by sugar maples and cabins that had additions they never pulled permits for. There used to be a walking path looping like a belt. Now it was blocked by tall fence panels and Jersey barriers. Armed guards, real ones, paced the perimeter. They looked bored until they didn't. Our first job was crude. Carve temporary roads so folks ringed by the fence could still get to the county highway. We carved, we laid fabric, we dumped Class 5, we tamped, we waved apologetically at someone's aunt as her escape bounced over our seams. We put up signs the locals ignored and kept making the road better so they could ignore us safely. By day 5, they staked off a corner of the lake like it owed money. Sandbags, cofferdam panels, something big with a crane. Someone was shouting, set back," and a man in a blue hard hat, their color, not ours, walked the line with a tablet like Moses with an app. I asked what we were doing. A woman from the in-house team said, separating a hydrologic unit, which was a $5 way of saying we were about to drain a chunk and keep it from finding a way back in. The frogs were everywhere. Great big suckers, way too comfortable around boots and diesel. They sat on our mats like green rocks and blinked slow, ignoring the earth shaking. We got the first chlorine day the same time we got the pumps. 4 industrial units the size of little sheds. They thrummed through your kneecaps. Tankers arrived empty and left full. then returned again and again. Men in white Tyvek suits shouldered steel canisters and took the banks like firefighters running toward a strange kind of flame. There was a smell you knew from pools and summers, but wrong, too sharp, too chemical, like it was shaving the inside of your nose. At night you went home and it was still there. You tasted it in the beard you forgot to wash. 10 days in, the level dropped enough that the water looked naked, roots showing, half-buried stumps, a shopping cart in a place you couldn't push one. On the mudflat something rose like a ship under a thin tide, not metal. Old wood, dark and stubborn. Lines that were once straight reed wavy through the muck. I was on lunch. Bologna sandwich on white bread, cut diagonal like childhood. Brone sat beside me, cracked a Gatorade. Looked like his mind was walking 3 places while his body rested in one. "Town hates us," he said, like a weather report. "They'll like the road," I said. He chewed, swallowed. "Maybe." Across the pit, a man in Tyvek slipped, hands pinwheeling, and someone else grabbed his air tank and yanked him up by the spine. Everyone laughed that nervous laugh you do when the bad thing didn't happen where people could see it. We heard about the church from a guy who used to frame houses and now held a scope on a rifle. "They say it sank the spring the ice never left," he mumbled. "I say a church doesn't go down all at once unless it wanted to go." I laughed because it was a funny sentence. Later, when I was alone, I tried to picture a building wanting anything at all. Interior safety was my thing. I liked the quiet work where you had to trust your eyes and your ears and the feel of lumber under a boot. I volunteered, listed off my certs, signed a form that basically said if I fell through a century-old floor, it was because I decided to be gravity's friend. Outside first. A bell tower's stump, empty hole where the bell would hang, crossarms stained a darker shade, joinery that looked older than it was because water teaches wood to lie. Windows coated in algae film like old bottle glass. The door gave only when you asked a certain way, and I'd opened enough stubborn doors to know when one was saying not yet and when it was saying fine. Inside, light died fast. We strung temp lines and clamped work lights one by one so the darkness knew we were serious. Still, the place ate lumens. Under the pews the floor was a shallow sea of frogs. They moved as a piece, like a thought. The smell was Methodist basement, coffee urn, aftershave, communion grape, mop water. Under that was the lake. And under that was something like nickel or wet coins. I set my boot and listened. Old wood tells you things, where it's hollow, where it's sound, where it's tired but proud. Safe enough for a few, I told the man with the tablet. No machines past the nave. We'll get grates down so nobody takes a swim. He tapped the tablet like my words weighed what they were supposed to. She found me when I was dragging a coil of cable like a snake molting rubber. White hard hat, bright jacket too clean for our mud, eyes that did the thing where light catches and holds. Badge that said a lot of letters but not her title. "Hi," she said, "I'm Eva." "Bobby," I said because that's my name when people aren't mad at me. "You with?" I gestured generally, which covered government, the company, a different company, and God. "Assessment," she said, smiling like the word was harmless. "I just watch what you do and make notes, and then other people argue about my notes." "Sounds cozy," I said, and immediately felt the heat in my ears because it sounded flirty in a room where frogs were carpeting the aisle. "Cozy adjacent," she said, and tucked hair behind her ear the way people do in commercials for toothpaste and pickup trucks. She helped. Not with the things that would get her in trouble, but with little things that made my day better. holding the light when my clamp wanted to pop, keeping a tally when I was calling lengths, asking exactly the right number of questions, and then stopping. When she left, she smelled like something floral I couldn't name until hours later. Violets. I only knew because my grandma kept lotion in her glove box. Nights got long quick when your body remembered the smell of chlorine like it was a problem to solve. I lay in a rented bed and heard the neighbor's TV argue through a wall and counted the ways drywall failed to keep a life separate from another life. My throat rasped. I drank water until I felt it slosh. I got up at 2 and hawked up something black into a sink that listed when the upstairs neighbor showered. I shone my phone light into my mouth, checked my tonsils like I was my own unhappy doctor. There were dots like pepper, but maybe they had always been there and I'd never looked. I told myself I was catching something. I told myself it was the air. I told myself I was 37 and men my age start learning which noises are just theirs now. Daylight brought orders. We were installing grated steel floors and taking windows out the fast way. The in-house crew wanted the light, the locals wanted the fence gone, the budget wanted the calendar thinned. Everything wanted something and only some of it said please. When the first window broke, the sound was thinner than you'd expect, like glass that had been dreaming too long. Sun roared in like a third-shift welder, and the frogs slid deeper into their shade like they'd practiced. I was hunched over a pry bar when a hand tapped my shoulder. Eva, how she moved through a worksite without becoming the worksite was its own trick. "I want to show you something," she said, low voice, like we were already in a secret even if we were just two people in a bright room with 100 men. "You always ask like I can say no," I told her. "You always answer like you won't," she said, smiling around the truth of it. We ducked past a door that wasn't supposed to open, stairs that should go up but didn't, stone that should be dry but wasn't. The church whispered, "Old wood always does," but this was another thing, like a breath pushed through reed. The basement wasn't exactly that, more an older level someone had stopped using because the lake decided to keep it. A storage alcove spilled splinters like a busted crate. Shelves held the memory of books. Someone had stacked rocks in a careful, useless way that made you feel tender and angry at the same time. Then the light. It wasn't a bulb. It wasn't a reflection. It was a color that chose you. Cyan first, like hospital lights filtered through winter ice. Then the purple veining, like a bruise choosing where to heal. I said nothing for a while because I didn't trust my mouth to make sense. When I did, I heard the rasp. "What is it?" Eva didn't answer right away. She watched me instead. It felt like she was studying not my face but the part behind it that keeps a ledger of what I owe and what I fear. "It's older than the church," she said finally. "And older than the lake the church sank in. Don't ask me how I know." "You always know things and then tell me not to ask how you know," I said, feeling brave because the room made me stupid. "Maybe I like the sound of your questions," she said. "Maybe I'm tired of other people's answers." We stood there like that, two people in borrowed PPE staring at a thing that glowed without heat and hummed without making a sound. A frog somewhere under a slab remembered what it was to be a tadpole and kicked at nothing. When she touched my hand, it was quick, like she thought the impulse and her body obeyed before she could be cautious. The glove squeaked against the glove. It was the least romantic contact imaginable. My heart thrashed anyway. "Don't stay long," she said and squeezed once. When I crawled into bed that night, my throat pulsed. I dreamed of beans in a mason jar swelling in water. At the edge of sleep, I heard a croak not from outside but inside, like a friend clear-throating before a toast. I woke with violet in my nose and a mercury taste on my tongue and decided, sternly, like a foreman with a clipboard, to do exactly one stupid thing tomorrow. In Minnesota, you can tell what kind of week you're going to have by the way the morning fog sits on the low ground. If it's thin and lazy and the sun burns it off by coffee break, folks stay nice. If it clings and won't move like a stubborn stain, you're in for meetings. The kind of meetings that make a man want to dig a hole just to feel something give. The fog clung. They have us start the day at the south gate, where the path used to be and where the fence now gleams like an apology no one accepts. The hatchet logo people keep swapping out signage, trying different tones of voice like it matters. Conservation in progress. Shoreline restoration work ahead. Temporary access change. Thank you, Tom's cog. The last one stings a little, like they're calling us by our first name to sell us a mortgage. A dozen locals crowd the barrier anyway, old boys in seed caps, a woman with a stroller, two high school kids filming on their phones, and a guy my age in a faded Vikings hoodie who keeps gently bumping the fence with his palm like he's playing tag with a bear. They look past us most of the time. We're not interesting compared to the men with badge lanyards and the short-eyed women with tablets who keep their sunglasses on even when the sun's not doing much. Hey, a man calls out, voice tobacco heavy. My mom can't get to dialysis without that shortcut. He jerks a thumb down the path that was. Roads open this way, I say, pointing to the temp lane we carved. It's a loop, I know, I'm sorry. He doesn't answer me. He looks at the woman with the stroller. She shakes her head a little like no, not yet. There's a choreography to anger when it's local. It knows when to flare and when to fold. A white SUV that pretends it's not a cop car pulls up, and a deputy in a clean uniform steps out and does what deputies do best in rural places. He listens with his hands on his belt and his head tilted a little. You can see him clocking who's here, what they want, who's likely to swing. He's good at his job. He is also outnumbered by men who do not care how good he is. Folks, he says, making the word mean friends and stop it at the same time. There's an access plan. They're trying to work with you. Is that what you call this? The man in the Vikings hoodie says, tapping the fence again, a little harder now. Working with. One of the hatchet logo women slides in like a knife. She introduces herself as Mara, Community Partnerships, which is a title you don't get unless you've wrangled bigger towns than this. She smiles a kind smile that flashes just a microsecond too long, long enough to look like training. She launches into a sentence that lives halfway between PR and Sunday school. We're here because we care about Frog Lake's long-term health. Invasive species pressure, shoreline erosion, nutrient loading, these are things that take courage to face. We can't do it without you. Then open the path, someone says, and there's a murmur of yes, that's right, do that simple thing, and the deputy's hand shifts on his belt. Mara keeps smiling. We can't do that today. Tomorrow. Not tomorrow either. Then when? When it's safe. When it's safe is one of those phrases that turns a person into a policy. Nobody here wants to be a policy. Brone appears at my shoulder, the way bosses do when a crew is about to decide who they answer to. He's not flashy. Sun-dark skin, beard that's gone salt and pepper in the months I've known him. He stands with his thumbs hooked in his pockets like a farmer. I've watched him shut down a screaming match with a nod, and I've watched him make a grown man cry by using his first name. He says nothing and it works better than a paragraph. We pull a section of Jersey barrier into place with the skid steer, and the locals take it personally, even though the Jersey has no feelings. A kid in a Duluth pack hat yells sellouts at us and then looks surprised at his own voice. The deputy wades in and touches the Vikings guy lightly at the elbow, and the guy looks down at the hand like a spider landed there and gently removes it and sets it in the air between them. Things will be fine. Things will not be fine. You can always tell both at once. We get back to the work we came to work. The pumps breathe. Hoses quiver. That sour-sweet chlorine tang finds a way to live inside your nose hairs and call it home. Today the Tyvek men run a different line. Fat braided hose that disappears under the damn panels with a cough. It all looks like medicine you give a thing that isn't sure it wants to live. Permits came through. A blue hard hat man tells another blue hard hat man, like a prayer answered. I never see a piece of paper, just the energy change. Every construction site in America runs on the faith that somewhere in an office, someone stamped a thing that means we can. My throat's better and worse in waves. It's like a bruise you forget about until you bump it on a drawer. The more I forget, the more it reminds me. When the wind is right, the frog chorus gets inside your ribs and uses them for a drum. I carry sections of grating with a new guy from Two Harbors who lifts more with his back than I like. He tells me about his cousin who caught a muskie here in 2003 and how it's a lie the DNR never proved. He tells me about his ex-wife and her new boyfriend who drives a Tacoma that's too nice for the man he is. He tells me stories because that's how men get through hard mornings, by turning the mouth crank until the heart stops whining. You hear about the window lady, he asks. What window lady? There's a place overlooking the south curve, he says, nodding toward the tree line. Old log house. Lady keeps her kitchen window open even when it's 40 out. Says it has to breathe. Maybe she cans, I say, thinking of my aunt who left the back door open whenever she ran the pressure canner because she was convinced steam changed the taste of peaches. He shakes his head. Says the house asks for it. We set the grate and he rubs his lower back and I pretend I'm not watching him rub his lower back. That's how you let a man keep his pride. By lunch, chatter dries up. Men eat like men eat, fast and with the determined appreciation of people who built their own hunger. The locals thin. The deputy leaves. The PR woman changes her tone to soft and personal for whoever's left, and I try not to hear her bend words into a shape that makes sense if you close one eye. I spend the afternoon in the nave with a list of tasks that reads like a rosary, the kind that only works because your hands move when your mind's gone. Tighten clamps, check span deflection, tag the pew run for demo, mark any rot that isn't cosmetic, look up at a window frame and ask yourself a question that isn't actually about wood at all. Why does sunlight feel heavy in here? The first pane goes with a spidering sound that makes everyone flinch even though we planned for the sound. Shards fall and clap the grating and leap once and lie down. The light is harsh, Midwest noon turned surgical. Dust performs in it like it's auditioning. The frogs don't flee. They adjust, the way anything adjusts when it has outlived the weather. I'm mapping measurements onto tape when Eva slips into my day the way music slips into a bar you didn't know had a jukebox. She has the seventh sense all good managers have. She knows when the room can afford to lose a worker for 5 minutes and when it can't. She knows now is the first kind. Walk with me, she says low, not a question. We skim the aisle where the choir would have processed and duck past a temporary caution chain that suggests not in forces. She leads, I follow, and we breathe the same air for a long hallway of seconds that feel like something you'd pay to feel again. In the stairwell, she pauses and checks behind us the way you do when you're about to say something that doesn't want listeners. Down below, a thin blue glow brushes the edges of stone like a hand thinking about touching a cheek. "I have to ask you something," she says. "Okay. Do you trust me enough to hear a thing you won't like? That the thing I won't like is coming from someone I want to like makes it worse." I tell her, because the room's making me honest again and I don't know if I mind. "I told you not to stay long down there," she says. "That wasn't a joke. That wasn't me being careful for paperwork. That was me trying to save you from accruing." Accruing what? Her jaw works. She's choosing words not to fit my understanding, but to fit whatever rules she's had to memorize the way you memorize emergency numbers as a kid. "Some places keep score," she says. "You don't want them to know your name. I want to ask 100 questions. I want to ask none." My throat tightens for no reason, the way a road narrows at a bridge. I taste metal. She notices the swallow and shifts her weight as if ready to catch me if I fall. "I'm fine," I lie. "Good." She lies back, and there's something beautiful about two people keeping the same wrong promise. We don't go all the way to the glow. We aim for a side room I'd written off as storage because everything looks like storage when it's eaten the lake's memory. She pulls a folded sheet from a plastic sleeve tacked inside the door frame. The paper's new, the ink's crisp, the corners are clean. It is the kind of paper that appears after meetings. Site safety, residential interface guidance sits at the top. The bullet points are what you expect: no trespass, no photos, report contact. But halfway down, the font switches to a box. The kind of box I've only seen on hazard comms placards, the kind they laminate and never throw out. It looks like a rule card a church might post, except it's typed in a sans serif that hates you. She taps the box with a gloved finger. "Read that," she says. It says, "Rule 1, lakeside windows. No residential window facing Frog Lake should be left open after dusk. If already open, close and latch. If unable to close, vacate room by nightfall. Report households that refuse compliance to gate command. Do not explain, do not argue, do not look in." I read it twice because what looks simple rarely is. "This is a joke," I say, but my stomach doesn't believe me. "It's policy," she says. "Policy based on what?" "Based on experience," she says, and I hate that the word experience makes me picture a face and not a spreadsheet. "I'm not knocking on some old lady's door to tell her how to run her draft," I say. "That's not my job." "It won't be," she says quickly. "There's a community team for that." Then softer, "But you should know, because if you see an open window facing the water after dusk, you shouldn't be the one who stands there trying to talk logic through the screen." "What happens?" I ask. "If it's open?" She inhales like the answer is further inside her than usual. "It's not about what you see in, it's about what sees out." Something shifts in the stairwell, a pressure change like a heavy man sat on a couch. Up above, someone curses cheerfully about a stuck bolt. The day is normal again if you only listen to the top half of it. I fold the paper back into its sleeve like it's something precious or dangerous, which it is. I want to ask if there are more rules. I want to tell her about the taste in my mouth, and the nights that pulse, and the way the word dusk feels like a trap here. Instead, I do a practical thing because that's the only way I know how to step back from edges. "You eat yet?" I ask. She does the half-laugh that says thank you for the off-ramp. "Not really. I have a sandwich that's mostly mustard," I say. You look like someone who deserves mustard. I look like someone who needs to remember how to eat, she says, and the honesty of it makes me like her more than the perfume ever did. We split the sandwich on a pew that probably held a family with a name that ends in son. For a moment, we are two people at work who got lucky and found a pocket of quiet. Then from the nave a pane goes all at once, no spidering this time, just a clean surrender, and a gust runs the aisle and fingers the hair at the back of my neck as if to test texture. We go back to work like you do when a thing unsettles you more than it should, by moving toward it with tools in your hands. The afternoon sags into a rhythm no one likes. Men with pry bars grunt and swear and give in and try again. A supervisor with a too-straight spine starts counting in a way that's supposed to coordinate and only creates new angles for resentment. Outside, another little knot of locals forms and dissolves like weather. The deputy returns and leaves. Someone from the county emergency management office arrives with a folder and a face that says he's going to be the one who signs a thing if something goes wrong. Near quitting time, the light does the yellow that isn't warm it does before a storm. You can feel the day tilt toward evening, and even men who don't believe in anything believe in that tilt. Someone calls 5 o'clock early because the pumps need a reset, and there's no use standing around chewing per diem air. On the walk to the south gate, I pass a house tucked just beyond the temporary fence line. It's a tidy log place with a flag out front and a birdbath the robins have claimed. The kitchen faces the water through a bay of old, wavy glass. The casement window is propped 3 inches open with a ceramic spoon rest as if Grandma improvised a hinge. Rule 1 wakes up like a moth in my chest. On the porch, a woman about my mom's age waters a hanging fern that doesn't need it. She watches me watch the window. Helps the house breathe, she says, not unkindly. Evenings get buggy, I offer, and it's the kind of half-point conversation men have about weather when they are actually talking about other things. She smiles in that Minnesota way that acknowledges your words and declines them softly. That's why God made screens. I nod because I can't say the thing I'm not supposed to say. I can't explain the paper in a wall that isn't hers. I can't be the man who knocks on a stranger's life and hands her a rule that reads like superstition with a logo at the bottom. She says, like she's telling the fern something, it doesn't like to be shut. What doesn't? The kitchen, she says, brows pinched, then laughs at herself like she'd tripped and recovered. The room, I know how it sounds. My husband used to tease me about it, then he stopped. Because you yelled at him. Because on Wednesdays it feels wrong. I close it on Wednesdays. I don't know why. She shrugs, embarrassed at her own honesty. I suppose we keep the habits that don't hurt anyone. A mosquito lands on my wrist and I slap it without apology. The frog chorus swells. Somewhere behind me the pumps thrum back to life, steady as a marriage vow. I want to say please close it after dusk. I want to say latch it even if the latch is fussy. I want to say don't look in. That's what the paper said that doesn't belong to you or me or anyone who lives here. Instead I say, have a good night, ma'am. And I hate the way the word ma'am tastes like surrender. Back at the apartments, the guys are tired in the way that keeps their mouths running. 2 Harbors Back guy tells a story about a beaver that chewed through a dock and got famous for a week. Someone else says his cousin saw a school of suckers swim in a circle and spell HI, which is a lie, but is the kind of lie that tells you what a man wants to be true. I shower twice and still smell the lake the way you smell a campfire 3 days after the camping trip. I watch a video where a man teaches me how to fix a carburetor I don't own. I text no one because the only person I want to text is 2 walls away, and in a world where texts are FOIA-able. When the sky does the dark that isn't all the way dark, I step out onto the concrete stoop and breathe the apartment complex air. Old ACs, dryer sheets, cheap charcoal, lilac bushes trying their best. Somewhere not far a screen door bangs and an old man swears without heat, and a dog decides not to bark after thinking it over. The frogs are louder. It's not my imagination. The new road we carved carries a steady thump of tires. The lake is a dark idea wrapped in chain link and work lights and a story that shouldn't be told yet. A window above me slides down, not all the way, just a few inches. The sound is domestic and clean and makes me think of my mom airing out cabbage night. I tilt my head and stare at the strip of shadow between sash and sill and tell myself I'm being stupid and tell myself I'm being smart. My throat tightens, not a choke, not pain, more like the feeling you get when someone calls your name in a crowd and you can't tell which way it came from. I swallow and it clicks. The click seems loud. Across the lot, a kid drops a basketball and it bounces and bounces and then hands stop it. A woman laughs. A TV blares a commercial with a jingle that makes me want to throw something. In the room behind the just cracked window, a lamp clicks on. It throws a little trapezoid of light on the vinyl siding, and for a second the siding looks like water, and for a second the water looks like siding. The brain is a liar when it's tired. I should go inside. I stand there instead. That is the way of men who mistake being still for being brave. A moth flicks the bulb over the stoop. Somewhere, deep as plumbing, a croak runs under my feet like a pipe rumbling. I hear a whisper that isn't language and isn't wind and is the exact temperature of the Rule 1 box in my memory. I finally make the adult choice and step back through the slider. I close it with a care I don't use on doors that don't matter. I lock it. I tell myself I did it for the air conditioning. In the bedroom mirror, my eyes look normal until I lean close. Then there it is again, the thinnest line in the world, horizontal, bright as a hair caught on a lens. If I blink slowly, it vanishes. If I blink fast, it stays. I do the sensible thing. I turn the mirror to face the wall. In the dark, the frogs sing the lake to sleep or wake it up. I can't tell which. The AC rattles. The couch squeaks when no one's sitting on it, and I tell myself it's settling wood and not the building learning my name. I lie down with the rule like a prayer tucked under my tongue. Rule 1: lakeside windows, close them after dusk. Do not explain, do not argue, do not look in. I try to picture all the reasons such a thing would be written by people in polos. I fail. I picture instead the kitchen window at the tidy log place. I picture the ceramic spoon rest keeping it open the exact width of a hand. I picture the woman's sort of smile, the kind that forgives strangers for bringing bad news they don't say out loud. Storm light flashes far off where the county turns into another county. It doesn't thunder yet. The air feels like a held breath. I let my eyes close. When they open again, it's because of nothing, and then I hear it, faint through drywall and ducts and the purpose of buildings. A whispering sound like someone easing a sash down, a latch catching, a house changing its mind. And for reasons I will not admit to anyone yet, reasons I don't have words for, my body lets go of a tension I didn't know I'd collected. Relief washes me, stupid and warm and total. The sort of relief you feel when a nurse finds a vein on the first try. I sleep like a man who has obeyed a rule and been, for the moment, spared the reason it exists. A building is supposed to tell you how old it is. Wood bows, nails rust, plaster cracks into spider webs. That's how the world marks time, by eating. But this church at the bottom of Frog Lake, it hadn't been eaten the way it should. When we stripped more water out, the nave stood there like it had been waiting for light. Not proud, not ruined. Just patient. I'd walked a lot of old places, barns, county fairgrounds, the odd condemned house with teenagers spray paint all over it. You get used to the smell of tired lumber. But here the beams were swollen and dark like driftwood, not crumbling. You could knock with a knuckle and get a sound back that said, "I've still got weight to carry." The lake had preserved it, like brine does to meat. It had a bell tower without a bell, just a hollow mouth pointing at the sky. Someone had built the joints like they knew water would get in. Wooden tongues overlapping like shingles on the inside, caulked with a pitch that still clung like molasses even after a century underwater. It was waterproof the way a ship is waterproof. And that was the thought that kept needling me. This wasn't a church that fell into the lake. It was a church that expected to drown. Inside, the acoustics were wrong. I'd drop a socket by accident and it wouldn't ring sharp. It would go dull, like the walls swallowed it. Even our boots sounded muted, as if we were walking through insulation. The light we hauled in with halogens got eaten alive by algae film clinging to walls, so everything looked underwater even when it wasn't. And the frogs, God, the frogs. They nested under the pews like congregants waiting for a sermon. When you walked the aisle, they shifted as one. Not scattering, not afraid. Just leaning with you, following your pace like a body turning its head. Brone told me to focus on the safety assessment, floor load, frame checks, bracing for demo. I made notes on a pad that went damp as soon as I flipped a page. But in the margins, without meaning to, I started scribbling words like preserved, sealed, airtight. That's when Eva showed up again. She had that clean look, the white hard hat without scuffs, bright eyes that found you first in the gloom. The kind of presence that makes you straighten your back without knowing why. She didn't ask permission. She just stepped inside, stood next to me, and let her gaze travel up the nave like she was reading a text only she could see. "Strange acoustics," she murmured. I nodded. "Dead, it's like shouting into a pillow." "It's not dead," she said. "It's dampened. There's a difference." I glanced at her. "You sound like you've thought about this before." "Maybe," she said with a smile that didn't explain. She walked a line between pews and crouched, trailing a gloved hand along the grain of a bench. 19th century Scandinavian joinery. These people knew floods, coastal stock, used to tides. When they came inland, they brought the habit. "You're saying they built this to sink?" "I'm saying," she looked up at me, eyes catching my headlamp beam, "that if you think about it too long, you'll get the answer you don't want." We worked side by side setting clamps, our hands brushing now and then. I kept waiting for her to step back into official mode, clipboard and distance, but she stayed close. Too close for a government assessor, not close enough for a confession. Every now and then I'd catch her looking at the walls, like she was trying to read the wood. "You hear that?" I asked once when the frogs croaked low under the pews. She tilted her head. "That's not frogs. What else would it be? Frogs croak, this is resonance." The way she said resonance made my throat itch. By late afternoon, more of the upper panes had been smashed out. Daylight filtered in like a reluctant guest, laying pale bands across the floor. Dust shimmered. A frog blinked, then slid into shadow. I stood there, boots planted, looking up at the roof. The beams didn't sag, the pitch lines were clean. The whole structure seemed to hold itself tighter the longer you looked, as if refusing to admit it should have collapsed decades ago. And then just for a second, I swear I saw it move. Not sway, not shift. Breathe. The ceiling boards lifted like lungs filling, then settled again. I froze. Eva noticed my face. "You saw it, didn't you?" "What did I see?" She didn't answer right away. She reached out, almost touched my arm, then stopped herself. "You'll learn," she said softly, "but don't tell the others, not yet." I wanted to press her to demand the truth, but the frogs croaked all at once. A rolling wave that filled the nave made the hair on my arms rise. My throat clenched as if echoing them. I swallowed hard. Black phlegm tasted like pennies at the back of my tongue. The church didn't feel like a ruin anymore. It felt like a lung, and we were inside it. Work sites get quieter when you put grates down. No one admits it, but everyone feels it. Before, every step was a gamble on damp planks that creaked like old knees. Once the steel goes in, once the clips snap and the crossbars lock, the footing is sure. Men breathe easier when the floor doesn't argue. I'd volunteered to help lay the first run of heavy panels, my gloves clanging against the teeth. The grates weren't just for OSHA, they were for us. That floor wasn't trustworthy. And after watching it pulse like a chest the day before, I didn't want to stand on bare wood longer than I had to. It should have been a two-man job, but she showed up again. Eva. She leaned her iPad against a pew like it was a clipboard and bent to steady the far end of the grate with me. Too clean for this work, too polished in her movements, but she knew how to balance weight. "You don't have to do this," I said, locking the first clamp. "I know," she said. "I wanted to." The way she said it made it sound like more than helping. The frogs shifted under the pews again, 100 little bodies pressing closer into shadow. Every time the light moved, they followed like their world tilted with ours. I told myself it was instinct. I didn't quite believe me. We laid 6 panels before we stopped to breathe. Sweat stung my eyes. She sat on the edge of a pew, hard hat tilted back, and smiled. Her perfume cut through the chlorine and mildew, the faint sweetness of violets like spring trying to remember itself. "You always smell like that?" I asked before I could stop myself. Her laugh was soft, private, like flowers, like something that doesn't belong here. "That's the idea," she said, watching me a little too long. It wasn't just perfume. It lingered after she walked away, threaded through my clothes. When I went home that night, the apartment smelled faintly of violets, even though no one else had been inside. That night was worse. I lay awake, staring at the popcorn ceiling, counting the whine of the AC until it clicked off. My throat itched, not raw, not sore, but wrong, like there was grit inside the lining. I got up, went to the bathroom, and spat into the sink. Black mucus spread in the porcelain, shimmering faintly before sliding down the drain. I held my phone light to my mouth. The peppery spots on my tonsils had multiplied. They weren't sores. They looked like something growing, dark dots, maybe tiny sacs pressed under the skin. And the sound. Every time I exhaled, I heard a faint rasp. Not wheeze, not whistle, a rasp like air moving over wet reeds. When I finally dozed, the dreams weren't mine. I was underwater, though I could breathe. My skin itched with the press of hundreds of tiny legs brushing past me. Frogs swarmed, not away from me but around me, circling like a halo. Their throats bulged in rhythm, croaking in waves that made the water tremble. I opened my mouth to scream, but all that came out was a low croak in answer. I woke choking, stumbling for the sink, more black mucus, bitter, metallic, salty. The mirror showed a stranger's eyes, normal at first glance, then slit horizontally when the light caught them. Only for a second, only if I didn't blink. I didn't tell the guys. At work, I carried rebar, measured beams, checked the clips. My hands were steadier than they had a right to be. My muscles didn't ache the way they should after that much lifting. It should have felt good. It didn't. Eva noticed. She always noticed. "You look different," she said that afternoon, watching me tighten a clamp with one hand. "Different how?" "Not tired." She tilted her head. "Everyone's tired here, but not you." I wiped sweat from my forehead, not sure how to answer. "Maybe I sleep better," I lied. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. "Maybe." When she left, the violet scent clung again, sharp in my nose, sweet in my throat. I wondered if she could smell the chlorine in me the way I smelled flowers in her. That night, the croaking started inside the walls. At least that's how it sounded. Not outside at the lake. Inside the drywall, inside the vents, inside me. I turned over, pulled the pillow on top of my head, and whispered a promise to no one. I'd just do the job. I'd finish the grates. I'd tear out the pews. I wouldn't ask questions. But the church had already asked one for me. And my body was starting to answer. The croaking didn't stop. Even under drywall, even through vents, even in my chest, it stayed. By morning, I couldn't tell if the sound was frogs, pipes, or me. I showed up to work like normal. That's what men do, show up. Steel grates, pry bars, dust masks, the whole ritual. Nobody asked why my voice rasped, why my eyes stayed red. Eva was waiting. Not clipboard diva, not government official Eva. Just her, leaning against the scaffolding like she'd been there an hour already, like she knew I'd come find her. "Walk with me," she said, not a question. We left the others pulling pews, their crowbars shrieking in wood that didn't want to break. She led me past the nave, past the halogen lamps, down into a narrow stone stairwell slick with algae. My boots slid on the first step. She didn't stumble once. At the bottom, the air was wrong, too dry for a basement that had lived under a lake. The smell was mud and rust and violets, always violets. Then I saw it. The fissure split the far wall, jagged and gaping, 8 feet long, 3 wide, and from inside light poured, cyan threaded with veins of pulsing purple, not steady, not random either. It had a rhythm, a heartbeat. It lit her face in alien colors. Her eyes gleamed too bright, like the glow belonged to her. "What is it?" I whispered. My throat rasped loud in the silence. She touched the stone near the crack, almost reverent. "It's what they came to bury and what they'll kill to keep hidden. The company." Her gaze snapped to mine, too sharp. "Not we, they." I didn't understand. I didn't want to. My stomach twisted. I bent double, hacking up black sludge onto the floor. It steamed where it hit the stone. Eva crouched beside me, steady, unflinching. "It's in you already," she murmured. "That's why you can stand here. That's why you don't run." The fissure pulsed brighter as I coughed, answering my body like it recognized me. My chest throbbed in time with it, each beat too loud, too heavy. She laid a gloved hand on my cheek, gentle as a lover. "You don't have to fight it." Her violet perfume was thick now, sweet enough to choke. She leaned close and her lips brushed mine, cold and warm at once, metallic and floral. The fissure flared, and for a split second, I didn't know if I was kissing her or it. That night I didn't go straight back to the apartment. My boots carried the smell of the fissure, mud, chlorine, and something sweet enough to rot teeth. Even after showering twice, it clung to my skin like it wanted in. The guys were drinking in the common room, talking about football and deer season. I skipped it. My throat burned and my chest still echoed the pulse of that light in the basement. When I finally lay down, sleep didn't come. It took me. I was underwater again, the same dream but heavier this time. Frogs didn't circle me now, they pressed against me, dozens, then hundreds, their slick bodies brushing my arms, chest, face. Their throats bulged and deflated in rhythm with mine, croaking low, vibrating the water itself. I opened my mouth to scream. What came out was a sound I'd never made before. A croak, deep and resonant like the lake had borrowed my lungs to speak. The fissure answered. I saw it beneath me, glowing brighter, stretching wider. A crack that didn't just split stone, it split worlds. And in the light something moved. Not quite shape, not quite shadow, just presence. Watching, waiting. When I woke, my sheets were damp with sweat and something thicker. My pillows stank of pond water. My throat bulged when I swallowed, like a pouch had formed under the skin. At work the next day, the guys barely noticed me. Maybe I was already blending in too well with the stink of chlorine and rot. But Eva noticed. She always noticed. "You didn't sleep," she said, stepping close, too close. I almost told her about the dream, about the croak, about the thing in the fissure answering me. But then she smiled and the words died. She leaned in, whispering where only I could hear. "Your body's adjusting, that's why it feels wrong, but it's not wrong, it's working." "Working for what?" I rasped. Her eyes flicked, bright as the fissure light. "For them, for us." That word "us" should have scared me. Instead, it settled in my chest like a truth I'd been waiting for. That night was worse. The croaking didn't just come from the vents now, it came from inside me. Every exhale rasped like a reed pipe, and when I stood in the bathroom mirror, I saw my pupils slit again, longer this time, horizontal like a frog's, and under my skin something twitched. I pressed my palm against my neck. It throbbed, warm and soft, like a second heart growing there. I should have screamed. I should have called someone. Instead, I thought of Eva, her perfume, her smile, the way her lips had tasted of myrtle and flowers. And the fear blurred, the horror softened. By dawn, I wasn't sure if I wanted it to stop. I wanted more. By the end of the week, the orders came down. No more talk about preservation. No more cautious assessments. The church wasn't going to be studied, it was going to be erased. They brought in the heavy equipment, cranes, bulldozers, dozers with steel teeth sharp enough to peel apart history. Trucks rumbled through town all night, carrying rebar cages, steel beams, explosives wrapped in plastic like groceries. Brone gathered us at the site before sunrise, his beard glistening with dew. He wasn't a man for speeches, but the words he had that morning carried the weight of command. "Demo starts Monday," he said flat. "We clear the nave, strip the windows, brace the tower, then the big boys bring her down." A ripple of relief went through the crew. To them, demo was clean, simple, no mysteries, just wrecking and hauling. Men prefer problems you can smash, but my stomach churned. My throat pouch throbbed with every syllable, and when I looked at the church, I swore the beams pulsed faintly like the building knew it was marked for death. Eva found me during lunch, away from the noise, leaning against a shipping container. "They're serious," I said, my voice low and raw. "They're really going to do it." Her face didn't change. She almost looked unsurprised. "Of course they are," she said. "They've always planned to. That's why you're here, why I'm here." "Why you're here?" I frowned. Her eyes flashed in the sun, too bright like glass catching fire. "You think they'd waste resources just to save frogs? You think this whole machine was built for ecology?" I swallowed, but it clicked in my throat, an ugly, wet sound. She stepped closer, close enough that I smelled violets again, stronger now, almost cloying. "They want it gone," she whispered. "But you felt it, haven't you? It doesn't want to be gone, it wants to be known." My skin prickled. The fissure's glow replayed in my mind, cyan and purple pulsing in time with my chest. I remembered the way it had flared when she kissed me, the way it had answered. "I don't know what I felt," I muttered. "Yes, you do." She touched my throat, fingers grazing the swelling pouch. I should have pulled away. I didn't. You feel them. That night I couldn't eat. The crew sat around a grill, burgers popping, beer cans cracking open. I pushed food around on my plate while my body hummed like a tuning fork. When I lay in bed later, the croaking filled my apartment walls again. Not faint this time, louder, layered, almost language. I pressed a pillow to my head, but the sound was inside me too, vibrating in my chest. And for the first time I swore I understood it. Not words, but intent. Don't let them destroy us. The next morning I stood by the fence line watching a bulldozer idle, its engine snarling. Men in blue hard hats laughed, tossed each other gloves unbothered. But when I looked at the church, its damp beams, its dark windows, its patient breath, I felt torn in two. Was I a contractor here to finish a job, or was I already something else, something claimed by the fissure, claimed by Eva? Brone's voice snapped me back. Get moving. They want it gutted by sundown. I hefted my crowbar. My throat croaked without meaning to. And the frogs, dozens of them scattered across the fence line, all croaked back together. Demo day started with a sky the color of wet cement. No sun, no shadow, just a flat gray lid pressing down on us. Men joked anyway because that's what you do when you're about to tear history apart with steel and diesel. The bulldozer rolled forward first. Its blade bit into the nave wall, splintering beams that had held their breath underwater for a century. Wood shrieked like metal, and every frog within earshot answered. Thousands of throats croaked in unison, a living alarm that rattled the air. The operator cursed in his cab, revved harder. The blade shoved deeper. Then the floor gave. It didn't sag, it didn't crumble. It snapped like glass under a boot. The bulldozer tipped nose first, its rear wheels lifting, the machine groaning as half of it vanished into the hollow below. Men shouted. Someone waved his arms for the crane. Too late. The dozer slid forward and disappeared with a crash that shook the ground. And the croaking stopped, not faded, not scattered. Just stopped like someone had cut the power. The silence was worse. I ran toward the pit before I could think. Dust hung in the air, gray and heavy, swallowing spotlights. I peered down, and through the haze I saw it, the fissure, split wider by the collapse. Its cyan-purple glow pulsed like a heartbeat, faster now, brighter, spilling light across broken pews and twisted steel. The men on the surface cursed, called for ropes, barked for silence, but my chest was already answering the fissure's rhythm, beating in time with it. My throat croaked low without permission, and the fissure croaked back. Eva appeared beside me, sudden as always, untouched by the dust storm. Her eyes shone in the glow, too bright, too hungry. "They've woken it," she whispered. "Woken what?" My voice cracked. She didn't answer. Instead, she pointed down. Through the swirling haze, I saw movement. Not men, not machines. Something else climbing from the fissure. Slick limbs, jointed wrong, glistening like wet rubber. Shapes that shouldn't have fit in the gap but forced their way out anyway. The crew saw it too. Shouts turned to screams. Someone fired a nail gun like a weapon. Someone else ran for the trucks. The bulldozer operator's cab door burst open. He crawled halfway out before his chest caved in with a wet crunch. Frogs poured from his mouth, his eyes, his throat, spilling across the steel floor in a wave. Men scrambled back. A guard raised his pistol. "Don't." Eva snapped, voice sharp as glass, but the shot went off anyway. The sound cracked through the silence and the fissure flared, blinding. When my vision cleared, I saw the church walls bowing outward, wood bending like lungs filling with air. The building wasn't collapsing. It was breathing back. And in that breath I understood something I hadn't wanted to know. The church wasn't being destroyed. It was being born. The site reeked of diesel, wet wood, and blood. Not human blood, not exactly. The bulldozer operator's body was gone by the time they pulled the wreckage back. What lay twisted in the steel frame wasn't a man anymore. It was a sack of skin, ruptured, oozing a slurry of frogs that twitched for a few seconds, then stilled. Men retched behind their masks. Others just stared, their eyes flat, like the part of their brain that called things possible had been shut off. Brone barked orders, dragging us back into line. Lock the perimeter. Nobody in or out, you hear me? Nobody. His voice cracked like a whip, but it sounded small against the groan of the church walls, because the church was still breathing. Boards expanded and contracted. Dust fell from rafters in soft puffs, timed to something bigger than lungs. Each exhale rattled the scaffolding. Each inhale pulled the smell of chlorine out of the air and replaced it with damp, green rot. And underneath it all, violets, sweet and wrong. That night the guards doubled. Trucks lined the road like barricades. Floodlights turned the lakebed into a stage, and men with rifles stood at the edges, watching shadows instead of work. I sat alone on the stoop of our apartment unit, throat pouch swollen, pulse echoing in my ears. Every time I swallowed, the croak came out louder, more insistent. I couldn't tell if it was in my throat or if the fissure miles away was singing through me. That's when Eva appeared. No headlights, no footsteps, just there, leaning in the glow of a floodlight, calm as if none of it mattered. "You saw it," she said, not a question. I nodded, unable to form the words. "You felt it." I wanted to deny it, but my throat betrayed me, croak, low and guttural, rumbling through the night. Her smile was soft, almost pitying. She stepped closer, perfume choking the air, violets heavy and sharp. She cupped my cheek like she had before, but this time her fingers lingered over the swelling in my neck. "It's almost time," she whispered. "They'll never understand, but you're already part of it." I pulled back, desperate. Part of what? The joining. Her eyes caught the floodlight, pupils gleaming too wide, too hungry. "Blood and violets, flesh and water, you'll see soon." I should have been afraid. I should have run. Instead, I leaned closer. Her lips met mine again, cold, sweet, metallic, electric. And when she pulled back, I tasted copper and mud and perfume all at once. Behind us, frogs croaked in perfect unison, thousands of throats, one voice. And my body answered. By dawn, I wasn't sure where I ended and the fissure began. They came for me before breakfast. Two men in black jackets, no names on the chest, no humor in their eyes. Not cops, not contractors. Company men, the kind who never get dirt on their boots. They didn't ask, they told. "Get dressed." They walked me across the compound, past the floodlights still burning from the night before. The church sat in silhouette against the sky, its bell tower leaning but not falling, boards flexing with each phantom breath. Men worked around it like ants around a fire, pretending not to notice the smoke. They took me to a prefab trailer that smelled of paper and sanitizer. Inside, a single desk, a chair, a recorder that clicked on with a red light. The first man spoke flat. "Tell us what you saw." I told them about the bulldozer, the collapse, the fissure. Left out the part where frogs poured from a man's skull. Left out Eva's lips on mine. Left out the croak still trapped in my throat. The second man leaned forward. "We know more than you think. Don't insult us." His eyes lingered on my neck, the pouch that swelled when I swallowed. I tried to hide it with my collar, but he noticed. They always notice. "Listen," the first man said, lowering his voice, almost kind. "What happened here, it doesn't leave here. You understand, you go back to your apartment, you do your job, you collect your paycheck, you keep your mouth shut. And in return, he slid a manila envelope across the desk. Thick, heavy, the kind of thick that means freedom if you know how to use it. Or, I rasped. The second man smiled thin, or you disappear like him. He tapped a folder on the desk. Paper clipped to the top was a grainy photo of the bulldozer operator, alive, smiling, arm around a kid, a family photo maybe, not the sack of skin I'd seen hours later. The manila envelope sat between us, fat and waiting. That night Eva found me again. She always knew where I'd be, alone, stoop, throat aching. They questioned you, she said, not asking. Yeah, and what did you tell them? Nothing. She stepped closer, violet scent wrapping around me, heavy as a fog. Good, because they can't save you, they can't save themselves. I swallowed, the croak echoing out before I could stop it. Her smile widened. They gave you a choice, didn't they? I nodded. Then make the right one, she whispered. Not theirs, ours. Her lips brushed my ear. My body shivered like a live wire. And for the first time, I didn't think of myself as a worker with a paycheck or a man trapped in a project gone wrong. I thought of myself as part of the fissure, part of her. By the third day after the collapse, the crew wasn't a crew anymore. Men avoided eye contact. Breaks stretched too long. Work slowed to a crawl, every movement hesitant, like we were all waiting for the church to decide our next step. The building hadn't fallen, though half its guts were exposed. Its ribs bent in and out with each invisible breath. And from the fissure below, the glow never dimmed. Cyan and violet, pulsing steady, like a lighthouse for something that lived in the dark. The frogs never left either, even after all the chlorine, even after the pumps. They clung to every surface, every beam, every pile of debris, watching, waiting, and then the first man broke. We were tearing down pews when he snapped. A young guy from Duluth, couldn't have been more than 25. He'd been pale all morning, muttering under his breath, sweating even in the cold. When Brone told him to haul another stack of beams, the kid froze, dropped his crowbar. I'm not going back in there, he said loud. I saw what it did. I heard it breathing. You can't make me. Some of the guys laughed nervously, waiting for him to shake it off. But he didn't. He turned and ran straight across the site, boots slipping in the mud. Headed for the south gate like a man who just remembered he had somewhere better to be. The guards cut him off before he got 10 feet past the fence. No shouting, no warning, just rough hands dragging him down, zip ties biting into his wrists. He screamed and every frog on the site answered. The sound was deafening. The rest of us stood frozen, crowbars dangling, hearts pounding, watching a man try to fight his way out and realizing none of us would ever leave unless they let us. Brone finally muttered, "Back to work." His voice was steady, but his eyes weren't. That night, 2 more didn't show up for shift. One was found wandering the woods barefoot, clothes shredded, skin covered in welts. The other, they said he jumped into the drained lake pit, straight toward the fissure. Nobody went down to look. I sat outside my unit again, throat pouch swollen tight, air rasping in and out like a reed pipe. My reflection in the window glass showed pupils thin and horizontal. I blinked fast until they looked normal again. Eva slid into the shadow beside me, violet perfume threading through the night. "They're breaking," she said softly. "They're scared," I croaked. "They should be." She leaned closer, her hand brushing my arm, lingering over the cords of muscle that felt stronger than they should. "But not you. You're different. You're surviving the change." "What change?" My voice cracked, low and wet. Her smile was sad, almost kind. "The kind you don't come back from. The next day I carried a beam twice the weight of the others, no help, no strain. The crew stared, whispering. I could feel it, their distance. I wasn't one of them anymore, and I wasn't sure I wanted to be. By then I'd gotten good at hiding it. The pouch in my throat, the rasp in my breath, the way my eyes slit horizontal if the light hit them wrong. A cough, a hand at my collar, a quick look away that had bought me a few more days. But on the 12th morning the lie slipped. We were moving stained glass, shards of it, really down to the dumpsters when my glove tore on the edge of a frame. Glass sliced deep across my palm. It should have bled red. Instead, it bled black. Thick, oily, reeking of pond water. The guy next to me dropped what he was carrying, stumbling back. "Jesus Christ," he muttered, eyes wide. I clenched my fist, but the sludge oozed between my fingers, dripping onto the mud where frogs swarmed instantly, lapping it up. They croaked louder, excited, like it was food, like it was theirs. Brone saw it too. His jaw locked, his knuckles white around his clipboard. For a long second he said nothing. Then, "Get it bandaged. Now." His tone was iron, final, no room for argument. He turned away before the others could press him, but I saw the look in his eyes, fear and something colder, calculation. That night nobody sat near me in the common room. Eva came to me later outside under the floodlights. Her violet scent hit first, drowning the stink of chlorine and diesel. "You're marked now," she said, not scolding, not surprised. What the hell does that mean? My throat croaked low on the words, unintentional. "It means the fissure has claimed you. You can't pass for them anymore." She tilted her head toward the apartments where the other workers smoked in silence, deliberately not looking my way. "You belong to us now. Us." I swallowed and the pouch bulged. "Who's us, Eva?" Her eyes gleamed brighter than the floodlight. "The ones who remember, the ones who were waiting, the ones who can breathe both air and water." She reached out, touching my wounded hand. The black blood pulsed under her fingers, and where she touched, the skin didn't sting. It soothed. Her voice softened. "The joining is close." I shivered, not from fear this time. Joining what? Her lips brushed mine again, tasting of marrow and flowers. When she pulled back, her whisper was hot against my cheek. "Not what, who?" I lay awake that night, listening to the croaking in the walls. My hand throbbed with black veins spidering from the cut, curling up my wrist like roots. And when I closed my eyes, I dreamed of the fissure again. Wider now, glowing, waiting for me. By the next evening, the whole town had learned the word marked without anyone saying it out loud. Guys who'd split cans with me on Tuesday left a chair between us on Wednesday. My bandage went from conversation piece to warning label. Frogs followed me like I was a truck leaking grain. They posted a new set of rules on the plywood notice board by South Gate. Same hatchet logo, same cheerful font that makes bad news read like a bake sale. The page curled in the damp and still managed to look official. Lakeside windows after dusk, close and latch. Non-compliance, report to gate command. Do not explain, do not argue, do not look in. I'd seen that box already in the storage room with Eva. Seeing it outside under floodlights made the hair on my arms go to attention. You don't staple superstition to plywood and call it safety unless something has been keeping score. By sunset, the fence line grew a face. First it was 3 people and a stroller. Then it was 30. By the time the floodlights popped on and washed the lakebed the color of dirty teeth, there were 100 at least. Caps, hoodies, high school letter jackets with last names stitched in gold. People who knew which culverts plugged in spring, who waved at each other with 2 fingers from a steering wheel all winter. The deputy came back, Same clean uniform, same calm hands. They'd sent 2 more with him this time, and the one on the end had a face like a bully who grew up and learned to get paid for it. Mara from Community Partnerships reappeared with a kind smile and laminated talking points. She looked paler than the first week, like sleep had started bouncing off her. "Folks," the deputy tried, "we're working with the county on an access plan." A chorus came back. "We had an access plan for 50 years and you fenced it." "We're protecting the lake," Mara said, and the way she said protecting made it sound like owning. From the crowd, a voice I recognized but couldn't place said, "That your protection?" and pointed past us. I turned. On the far curve of shore, at the tidy log place with the bird bath, the kitchen window was cracked open the width of a hand. The ceramic spoon rest still propped it. Even from here I could see the curtains lift and fall like shallow breathing. My mouth dried. Rule 1 fluttered in my skull like a caught moth. "Ma'am," the deputy called, pitching his voice to travel, "please close your window before dark." A murmur rolled through the crowd, "It's her again," and a kid in a Vikings hoodie climbed the Jersey barrier to see better. Mara raised both palms like a choir director and turned to gate command, low voice tight. "Get community team to the lakeside homes, now." One of the security guys, black jacket, no name, leaned into his radio and nodded like he was agreeing with himself. The log house porch light clicked on. The woman stepped out with her watering can even though the fern was already dripping. She looked from the crowd to our side to the water, squinting into floodlights that washed out every true thing. "Evenings get buggy." The deputy tried again, pleading threaded into his professional. "It helps the house breathe," she said, not apologizing for her life. A man near me hissed, "Close it." Not loud enough for her to hear, just loud enough to share his fear. Wind pushed across the lake, a cool front that should have smelled like rain. It smelled like violets instead, sweet and wrong, sneaking under the chlorine and diesel. The sound the frogs make before a storm, low, layered, belly-deep, rolled up from the cofferdam and settled into the rib cages of every person there. The woman glanced back at her kitchen like she was listening to a reminder only she could hear. She didn't move to close the window. She set the watering can down as if to anchor herself in a choice. "Community team inbound," someone said into a radio, and that was when a teenager in the crowd yelled, "Open all of them." And the fence erupted, hands on chain link, elbows hooked, a shove that wasn't quite a push and wasn't quite not. The deputy's polite turn to loud, "Hey, hey, step back from the fence." The guard to my right raised his rifle without meaning to aim it. His hands shook. Nobody likes being the thin thing between a town and its water. The frogs went quiet, not faded, gone. Sound sucked out of the air so clean it left a ring. I didn't realize I'd started toward the fence until Brone's hand closed on the back of my vest and hauled me a step back like I was a toddler near a fire. "You're not the one who fixes this," he said. His voice didn't make space for argument. His eyes cut to my bandage and then away, as if what lived under it was a secret he'd keep for me until he couldn't. Across the lake, at the log house, the curtain lifted higher though the wind had fallen dead. I could see into the kitchen now, just the spill of lamplight yellow on old cupboards. The window was still open the width of a hand, the spoon rest held. "Do not explain, do not argue, do not look in." The woman stepped to the sill like a person approaching a sleeping animal. Her hand touched the sash. For a second I thought she'd pull it shut and we'd all go home with our hearts still inside us. A sound pressed through the glass. Not a voice. A pressure. like a deep breath taken by something that owned more than lungs. The sash lifted a half-inch on its own. The spoon rest skittered, rattled, held. The crowd went very, very quiet. The deputy took a step, then stopped. You could feel him hit the border where training gives out. "Please, ma'am," he said, and "please" trembled. The woman smiled at us, embarrassed at the attention, and reached for the spoon rest. "Don't," the guard barked, and then added, softer, ruined by fear, "please." The spoon rest slid. The sash rose like a person straightening their back after a long sit. The screen bowed inward and then outward, as if the room exhaled and the lake inhaled through the same mouth. The kitchen light flickered. Not off, not on, throbbed, in time with something that pulsed cyan and violet under the church's floor. Violets poured across the fence line, not as petals, not as smoke, but as scent, the heavy sweetness of lotion from a glove box in a grandmother's car multiplied and weaponized. I tasted metal on my tongue the way you do when you bite a penny. A boy on the barrier whispered, "What's in there?" and leaned, and I wanted to grab his collar and yank him down and tell him the oldest rule there is. If a thing asks to be seen at dusk, it wants to see you back. The screen bowed again. From the kitchen came the sound of beads rolling in a dish, or rain against a drumhead, or small wet bodies dropping in a patient rhythm. "They're here," someone to my left said, and I didn't know if he meant frogs or company men or the thing under the church. "Sight black," radioed gate command, voice suddenly made of metal. "All units, sight black. Lockdown." The floodlights on our side stuttered and fought back to full, then washed the log house so hard its shadows snapped like rubber bands. Through the glare I saw the woman's face tilt toward the window as though toward a whisper. Her mouth opened, not in fear, in recognition. The frogs answered with one sound, so low I felt it in my dental work. My throat answered back without my permission, a croak that wasn't mine and fit anyway. The pouch beneath my jaw swelled until the vest's collar cut. My chest matched a rhythm I recognized now. Fissure breath, room breath, lake breath, all the same breath counted by different clocks. Mara's voice cut thin. "Close that window, close it now." The woman blinked like someone had called her in from a yard. Her hand closed on the sash. Most nights that would have been the end of it. The window didn't move. Her shoulders pulled. The sash rose instead of fell, slow, generous, as if something on the other side had two fingers under it and all the patience in the world. The deputy started running then, because if you don't know what to do, you move your body and hope your body finds a use. The guards flanked him because that's what guards do when they haven't been told what this is yet. The crowd surged not to attack but to see, because seeing is a kind of ownership and none of us had any left. Through the screen the room went dim and then lit and then dim, a heartbeat. The spoon rest slipped to the floor in the kind of silence a church teaches you. From somewhere below us the fissure pulsed in time. "Back!" Broan snapped at me, and this time I listened, not because I'm obedient but because a man whose voice never shakes had let a tremor in. The window lifted another inch. The screen didn't tear. It bulged as if the room were full of soft water and we were outside in the hard kind. Something pressed against the mesh. Not a face, not a hand, the idea of a face, the suggestion of a hand. A curve of pressure that made my eyes water because my brain couldn't label it fast enough, and panic is often mislabeled as grief. The deputy reached the porch. He didn't go inside. He didn't touch the window. He put his palm flat against the door like a man swearing an oath he had not agreed to take. "Ma'am," he said, voice breaking in the exact place you never want a deputy's voice to break, Please step away from the window." The woman turned as if she were coming out of a daydream. Her hand slipped from the sash. The window hung open the way a mouth does when sleep wins. She looked past the deputy and straight at us at the fence like we'd called her name. I could smell violets as if I were standing in her kitchen. She closed her eyes, not in prayer, in relief. The light in the room went out. Not off out like a breath finished. A collective noise, crowd, guards, crew, rose, the sound people make when an ending picks up its pace. The deputy shouted something I didn't hear. A guard lifted his rifle and then didn't. The crowd pushed forward and then didn't. We stood in the theater of people who have overplayed their belief in daylight. From the window came the faintest ripple against screen, like the lake licking its lip. "Lock it down." Gate command barked, all radios at once. "All units perimeter, perimeter." The floodlights on our shore snapped brighter. The ones near the log house sputtered and died together as if they'd been on a single fuse you weren't supposed to pull. In the dark across the lake, something opened its eye and looked at the night. I knew its weight without seeing it because it had learned my breath. The crowd finally broke in a way that crowds do when they realize they were never in charge. Some ran for their trucks. Some fell to their knees. A few prayed in the crisp, plain way people around here pray when they're not sure who's listening. The deputy stayed on the porch, hand still on the door like a man ducking a wave. I lost sight of the woman entirely. The screen bowed once more, then flattened, beaded with condensation like a lung on a cold day. "Do not look in." I didn't. Not because the rule told me, because the part of me that wasn't mine anymore already knew. Behind me, the church exhaled. The frogs started again, softer, then louder, then everywhere until they were the only sound left besides the thudding in my neck. Brone's hand squeezed my shoulder once, more father than boss, and let go. "Back to quarters," he said, voice clipped, grief tucked away like a knife you might need later. Now, we walked in a busted parade through work light and diesel haze. I could feel the town watching, not with their eyes but with whatever windows weren't latched in time. On the stoop of our unit, I put my hand to my throat and felt the pouch flutter like a second heart. I didn't have to look in a mirror to know my pupils had gone thin and horizontal. My phone vibrated in my pocket. No text, no call, just a ghost vibration my nerves did now when the fissure wanted me to pay attention. Across the lake, unseen but exact, something breathed in a long, satisfied way. I breathed with it. And by the 8th night we all would. The riot at the fence didn't end clean. By the time the crowd broke apart, 2 locals were missing, a guard had a broken jaw, and the frogs had gone silent in a way that felt worse than noise. The company doubled the perimeter. Spotlights burned all night. Rifles glinted at every corner. But you can't lock down a thing that breathes. You can't cage a fissure. By the 8th night, the whole site was vibrating with tension. Diesel generators coughed. Men muttered in small circles, casting glances at me that weren't glances anymore. They were stares, long and unbroken, like they were waiting for me to drop my mask. Maybe I already had. The pouch in my throat bulged when I swallowed. My skin along the wound on my palm had turned slick, webbed with fine, dark veins. And my dreams no longer felt like dreams. They were rehearsals. Standing at the fissure, breathing in rhythm with it, croaking when it croaked back. I wasn't resisting anymore. I didn't know if I could. Eva met me that night inside the church itself, where floodlights couldn't kill the glow from below. The fissure pulsed cyan and violet, brighter than ever, and every breath of the building seemed to push the air through my ribs. "You feel it," she said, eyes reflecting the glow. It's in you now." I didn't deny it. My throat rasped as I answered, "What happens next?" Her smile was small, almost sad. "The joining. You keep saying that. What the hell is it?" Her hand brushed my cheek, gentle, but her touch sank too deep, as if her fingers already knew the map of my veins. "It's not death," she whispered. "It's not life, it's becoming. It's remembering what you were meant to be." I shivered and the fissure pulsed in time. Above us, a pane of glass shattered on its own. The shards rained down, clattering across the steel grates. Men shouted outside, boots pounding. Eva leaned close, her lips brushing my ear. "The others will fight it. They'll try to burn, to bury, to deny. But you," her breath smelled of violets, thick and sweet, "you'll open the way." The fissure throbbed, louder than my heartbeat, brighter than the floodlights. My skin tingled, my throat croaked without command. And in that moment, under the breath of the church, I knew she was right. I wasn't here to tear it down. I was here to let it through. They brought everything in for the tower. Explosives, cranes, dozers lined in a row like executioners. The company wasn't playing at conservation anymore. This was war, war against wood, against stone, against memory. Men planted charges at the tower's base while guards scanned the tree line. The locals hadn't come back since the riot, but their absence felt worse than their anger. It was too quiet. I stood near the scaffolding, my bandaged hand throbbing black under the wrap, throat pouch swelling and rasping every time I swallowed. Brone caught me staring too long at the fissure glow bleeding up through the floor. "You stay clear today," he muttered, low. Not an order, not quite a kindness either. More like a man giving warning to something he didn't understand. I nodded, but I didn't move, because Eva was there. She stepped out from the nave's shadows as if she'd always belonged among broken pews and floodlight beams. Her eyes caught the cyan glow and burned violet. Her perfume drowned the diesel stench. "They'll regret this," she said. "What happens when it falls?" I asked. My voice croaked, half human, half not. Her hand slid into mine, fingers cool, firm. "It doesn't fall, it opens." The countdown started. A voice crackled through radios, steady, professional. 3 minutes to detonation. Men cleared back. Guards raised rifles. Engines idled, coughing clouds into the night. I couldn't move. The fissure below pulsed faster, my chest matching it beat for beat. My skin prickled. The frogs gathered along the fence line, pressed so thick their bodies carpeted the mud. Thousands, silent now, waiting. Eva leaned close. "When it breaks, you'll understand. Don't be afraid." The charges blew. The ground jumped. The bell tower cracked straight down its spine, groaning like a wounded animal. Timber split, scaffolding collapsed, dust blasted into the floodlights. The tower should have fallen inward. Instead, it fell outward, ripped away as if something inside had pushed back. The fissure roared open, light flooding the sight, cyan and violet blinding. Men screamed, rifles clattered to the ground. The frogs answered in a single, deafening croak that shook the air. I dropped to my knees, not from fear, not from choice. My body simply obeyed the rhythm. My throat swelled, croaked back in answer. Black veins laced my arms, glowing faint purple under the skin, and in the rubble something moved. Not stone, not steel. Something vast, slick, jointed, wrong, forcing itself up through the broken tower base. A limb, then another, glistening in the impossible light. Eva's voice whispered at my ear, steady even in the chaos. "It's here. And you're the door." The tower didn't fall, it peeled. Timber and stone curled outward like the husk of a seed splitting open. And from the pit where the church's heart had been, the fissure yawned wider, light pouring skyward, cyan and violet streaking against the clouds. The men scattered. Some ran. Some fired rifles into the glow, bullets sparking uselessly against nothing. One dropped to his knees, screaming until frogs poured from his mouth and silenced him. Through the dust and roar, Eva stood untouched. Her perfume was gone now. What lingered was salt, algae, and something metallic, like blood left too long in water. Her outline blurred, first her eyes glowing too bright, then her neck stretching, then her arm unfolding into too many joints. For a moment she looked like herself, the woman I wanted to believe in. Then she looked like what she had always been. Limbs like tendrils, torso splitting and reforming, face rippling between beauty and ruin. And still, she smiled at me. "It's time," she said, though her mouth didn't move. The words came through the roar, through my bones. "Open yourself." The fissure pulsed and my body answered. The pouch in my throat swelled until I could hardly breathe. My fingers webbed. The black veins that had spidered from my palm now glowed faintly, alive under my skin. When I exhaled, it wasn't air but a croak, deep, resonant, vibrating with the fissure's rhythm. The others saw. They backed away, faces twisted in terror. I wasn't one of them anymore. I wasn't pretending well enough to pass. Eva reached for me, her tendril arm brushing my chest with something like tenderness. "You've carried it longer than most. That's why you survived. That's why you were chosen." "Chosen for what?" I rasped, though I already knew the answer. "To join." The fissure widened further and it emerged. Not a body, not in any human sense. A mass of limbs and sacs, translucent veins pulsing with light. An eye the size of the church's nave rolling upward to meet the night sky. Frogs poured into the pit, vanishing inside its bulk like raindrops into the ocean. And when the great eye turned, it didn't look at Eva. It looked at me. I felt my chest split, not with pain, but with release. The rasp in my throat became a song, layered, inhuman, echoing the croak of every frog. My skin prickled, softened, slickened. My lungs filled with air and water at once. Eva's voice wrapped around me, warm and certain. "Let go, join, be what you were meant to be." For one heartbeat, I saw the choice. Behind me, men screaming, rifles useless, floodlights collapsing, Brone's voice breaking as he shouted orders no one would follow. Before me, Eva radiant in her ruin, the fissure endless and calling, the eye patient, expectant. And inside me, the truth that I had never belonged to the men on this site, not really. Not since the first kiss, not since the first rasp in my throat. Maybe not ever. I stepped forward. The fissure swallowed my shadow, then my feet, then everything. The last thing I saw of Eva was her smile, soft as spring, before she too dissolved into light. The last thing I heard was the croak of 1,000 frogs harmonizing into one voice. The last thing I felt was warmth. Not fear, not pain, just warmth. And then, nothing human, only the joining,